Get to the back. Your cheap clothes are embarrassing. My father said that with his hand already on my shoulder, steering me out of frame, behind my sister, behind my mother, away from the center of the family photo like I was furniture they'd forgotten to move. My sister fixed her hair. My mother checked the lens. Nobody looked at me twice. I didn't argue. I didn't leave. I reached into my bag, pulled out that month's issue, and set it flat on the dining table. My face was on the cover. My name, my company. $12 for million, confirmed 2 days prior. 11 people in that living room watched my sister's smile drain out of her face in real time. My father's hand was still on my shoulder when it happened. What none of them knew was the folder sitting on my passenger seat. 14 calls my father had made to my investors over 22 months, his own handwriting on every log. Before I go on, take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if this story speaks to you. Drop your location and local time in the comments. Now let me take you back to the night my father looked across that same table and told my sister, "She doesn't have what it takes. She never did." The law of our house was simple. Chloe was the investment, and I was the insurance policy. If Chloe succeeded, we all celebrated. If Chloe failed, we looked at my life to feel better about how far she'd actually come. My role was to be the baseline, the girl who struggled so the golden child could shine. It was 22 months ago, a Tuesday, the kind of humid Virginia evening where the air feels like a wet blanket. We were gathered around the heavy oak table my father had refinished himself. He was at the head, carving a roast, the knife sliding through the meat with surgical precision. My sister, Chloe, sat to his right. She was 27, 3 years younger than me, but she lived like she'd already won a marathon she hadn't even started. She just closed her 3rd boutique in 4 years. Lush and Lace had followed the velvet hanger into the grave, leaving behind a trail of unpaid commercial leases and racks of unsold polyester. My father reached into his breast pocket. He pulled out a check. He didn't slide it. He placed it in front of her like a trophy. $3,000, he said. His voice was thick with a pride he never used on me. To cover the liquidation costs. Everyone hits a speed bump, Chloe. The important thing is that you have the vision to try again. Chloe beamed, her fingers tracing the edge of the check. My mother squeezed her hand, her eyes shining. "You're so brave, honey. Most people would just give up." I sat at the far end of the table, near the swinging door to the kitchen. My plate was half empty. For 6 months, I'd been waking up at 4:00 a.m., coding until my eyes burned, then working a 10-hour shift as a junior analyst just to keep my server costs paid. I had a prototype. I had a pitch deck. I had a vision that didn't involve selling overpriced candles. "I actually have some news too," I said. I tried to keep my voice steady. "I'm pitching my first seed round on Friday. A syndicate of local angel investors. It's for the data mapping software I've been building." The table went silent, not a thoughtful silence. It was the kind of silence you give a child who says they want to be an astronaut when they grow up. My father didn't even stop chewing. He swallowed, wiped his mouth with a linen napkin, and looked at Chloe. "Anyway, about the new location on Main Street, I think the foot traffic there will really help the next launch." "Dad," I said, "did you hear me? I'm pitching for funding. This is real." He finally looked at me. His eyes were cold, flat. "Maya, honey, let's be realistic. You've always been steady. You're a good worker. But you don't have what it takes to run a company. You never did. You're not a leader. You're the person who makes sure the leader's coffee is hot." My mother sighed, leaning back in her upholstered chair. "Maya, don't start. You're always trying to steal your sister's spotlight. Can't we just have one dinner where you don't make it about your little projects?" I felt the heat crawl up my neck. I looked at the roast, the linen napkins, the check sitting on the table. $3,000 for a failure while I was counting pennies for a breakthrough. "It's not a project, Mom, it's a business." It's a hobby that's costing you your 20s, my father snapped. Finish your dinner. I didn't finish. I cleared my plate, rinsed it in the sink, and walked toward the front door. The air outside was cooling. My car, a 2012 sedan with a dent in the rear fender, was parked on the street. Chloe's BMW sat in the center of the driveway, blocking everyone in. As I reached for the door handle, I heard footsteps on the gravel. It was Aunt June. She was my father's older sister, the one who had stayed single and worked as a librarian for 40 years. She didn't say much at these dinners. She mostly just watched. She handed me a stainless steel travel mug. "It's the good coffee," she whispered. "The stuff I keep in my bag because your mother only buys the cheap decaf for the rest of us." I took it, the warmth seeping into my palms. "Thanks, June." She leaned in, her voice low. "Build it anyway, Maya. Don't wait for his permission. Some men can't stand a building they didn't lay the foundation for." She squeezed my arm and went back inside before the mosquitoes could follow her. I sat in my car for 20 minutes. I didn't turn on the engine. I just sat there in the quiet dark, drinking the coffee. It tasted like cinnamon and spite. I pulled a notebook from the passenger seat and began sketching a wireframe for the user interface. My hand was shaking, but the lines were straight. I didn't need the seat at the head of the table. I just needed the screen in front of me. My phone buzzed in the cup holder. I looked down. New message, confirmation of pitch, Friday, 10:00 a.m. Coastal Angel Syndicate. I stared at the screen until the light dimmed. This was the opening. I just didn't know yet that my father was already looking for a way to close it. The high from that email lasted exactly 48 hours. On Friday morning, I walked into the conference room of the Coastal Angel Syndicate. It was a space of glass and polished concrete that smelled like expensive espresso and ambition. I had spent 4 hours the night before pressing my only blazer with a hair straightener and practicing my opening hook in the bathroom mirror. I nailed it. I could feel the energy in the room shift. When you're a founder, you learn to read the micro-expressions of investors, the way they lean in, the way they stop looking at their watches, the way they start scribbling notes that aren't just doodles. By the time I reached the slide about our projected growth in the logistics sector, the lead investor, a man named Marcus with sharp glasses and an even sharper reputation, was nodding. "The architecture is clean, Maya," he said, closing his leather folio. "And your burn rate is impressively low. We've been looking for a play in the data mapping space. I think we're looking at a lead position here." I walked out of that building feeling like I was vibrating. I stood on the sidewalk, the sun hitting my face, and for the first time in my life, I felt like I wasn't just the insurance policy. I was the main event. Then came Monday. I was sitting in my car, eating a granola bar for lunch when my phone chimed. It was an email from Marcus. My heart did a celebratory leap before I even opened it. I expected a follow-up on due diligence or a draft of a term sheet. Instead, the subject line was, "Update on Coastal Angel Syndicate interest." "Maya, thank you for the presentation on Friday. After a secondary internal review, the syndicate has decided not to move forward with an investment at this time. We've identified some unforeseen risk factors and potential liability issues that don't align with our current portfolio strategy. We wish you the best of luck." The granola bar turned to sand in my mouth. Unforeseen risk factors. Liability. We hadn't even reached the due diligence phase where they would look at my books that were spotless because I barely had enough money to make a mess. I replied immediately, asking for clarification. I called his office. I left 2 professional, measured voicemails. Nothing. Silence. I told myself it was just part of the game. Startups are a graveyard of almosts. I put my head down and kept grinding. I secured a pitch with a tech-focused firm in Arlington, then one in Richmond. every single time the pattern was identical. The first meeting would be electric. They'd love the tech. They'd love my background. They'd talk about next steps. And then 48 to 72 hours later, the door would slam shut. No explanation, no feedback, just vague phrases like mental bandwidth or stability concerns. By the 6-month mark, my savings account looked like a crime scene. I had $400 left. My server hosting fees were looming, and my car had started making a high-pitched whistling sound every time I went over 40 miles per hour. I was exhausted. I was living on coffee and the kind of frantic adrenaline that eventually eats your nervous system. That Sunday, I made the mistake of checking Instagram. Chloe had posted a photo. She was leaning against the hood of a brand-new, white luxury SUV, the kind with the panoramic sunroof and the leather that smells like a private jet. She was holding a shopping bag from a high-end designer, her hair perfectly blown out. The caption read, "New wheels for the new shop, Daddy's girl. So blessed to have a family that supports my dreams and knows when I just need a little boost. Grateful # entrepreneur life, family first." I stared at the photo until the screen timed out. My father hadn't just bought her a car, he'd funded her 4th attempt at a dream while I was currently calculating if I could afford to put $10 of gas in my tank to make it to a networking event. I looked at my reflection in the dark phone screen. My eyes were sunken. My skin looked gray. I looked exactly like the failure my father had predicted I would be. I didn't get it. I was doing everything right. My code worked. My market research was solid. My pitches were winning people over in the room. Why was the world tilting on its axis the moment I stepped out of it? I didn't know yet that the world wasn't tilting. It was being pushed. I picked up my phone and did something I swore I wouldn't do. I opened my contacts and hovered over Dad. I needed a bridge, just a small one. A month of breathing room on the personal loan I'd taken from him 3 years ago to finish my degree. I hit call. It rang 4 times before he picked up. "What is it, Maya?" he asked. No hello, just the sound of him shuffling papers. "Hey, Dad, I was just calling to, if this is about money, I'm busy. I'm helping your sister look over the lease for her new boutique space. She's doing real work, Maya, growing the family footprint." "I'm doing real work too, Dad. I just need a little." "You're chasing ghosts," he interrupted. "And you're looking a little ragged, frankly. Your mother is worried about your state of mind." Maybe it's time to stop the charade. He hung up before I could answer. I sat there in my whistling car, watching the call-ended screen. My hand was shaking so hard I had to grip the steering wheel with both palms. The first crack had appeared in the life I was trying to build, and I could hear the sound of the whole structure beginning to groan. I didn't wait for my father to hang up a second time. 2 weeks after that phone call, the whistling in my car wasn't just a sound, it was a warning. The transmission gave out on the I-95, smoke billowing from the hood like a signal fire of my own failure. I sat on the shoulder of the highway, watching the tow truck driver hitch my life's work to a winch, knowing I couldn't afford the repairs, and I certainly couldn't afford the rent on my apartment. I had $74. That was the math of my existence. I didn't call my parents to ask for a place to stay. I knew the price of their charity would be the permanent death of my company. Instead, I drove the rental, paid for by the last of my credit card limit, to their house. I just needed a breath. I needed the one thing I was owed, the grace period on that small personal loan. The house was glowing when I pulled up. It always looked perfect, like a museum of a happy family. Inside, the air smelled of lemon polish and roasting chicken. My father was in his study, a room lined with leather-bound books he never read and a mahogany desk that saw more ego than work. He didn't look up when I knocked. "I need that month, Dad," I said. My voice was raspy from the highway smoke. Just 1 month of grace on the loan, my car is gone, I had to move my things into a storage unit. If I can just get through this next dev cycle, no, he said. He didn't even stop writing. The answer is no, Maya. It's $500, I whispered. To you, that's a dinner out with your friends. To me, it's my housing. He finally looked up. He laid his pen down with a click that sounded like a bone breaking. It's not about the $500. It's about the fact that you are delusional. You are playing at being a CEO while you live like a beggar. It's embarrassing to this family. It's embarrassing to me. I am building something. You are building a debt, he snapped. He stood up, towering over the desk. Here is the deal. You liquidate that LLC by Monday. You bring me the dissolution papers. In exchange, I will pay off your back rent and you will move into the spare room. You will work the register at Chloe's boutique 40 hours a week. You will pay me back out of your wages there. You need discipline, Maya. You need to learn your place. I won't kill my company to fold sweaters for Chloe, I said, the words cold in my mouth. Then you're on your own, he said. And don't think I'll let you drag this family's name through the mud while you're at it. If you don't take this deal, I'm calling your landlord. I'm a co-signer on that original lease from 3 years ago, remember? I'll tell him I'm withdrawing my support immediately. I'll tell him you're a liability. You'd get me evicted, I asked. Your own daughter. I'd be saving you from yourself, he said, and for a second he almost looked like he believed it. Chloe needs the help. She's expanding. She's a success, Maya. Try to learn from her. I looked at him, really looked at him. He didn't want me to succeed. He didn't even want me to be steady. He wanted me small. He wanted me under Chloe's heel so the family hierarchy remained undisturbed. I didn't argue. I didn't scream. I walked out of the study, through the kitchen where my mother was humming and plating salad, and straight out the front door. I drove back to my apartment in a daze. I didn't turn on the lights. I just grabbed my laptop, my external hard drives, and a single worn backpack. I packed 3 changes of clothes and my chargers. I looked at the keys on the counter. My father's threat wasn't an empty one. He liked the feeling of a forced rescue. He wanted to be the hero who picked up the pieces of the life he'd helped shatter. I walked out, locked the door, and left the keys under the mat. I wasn't going to wait for the eviction notice. I wasn't going to wait for him to call the landlord. As I pulled away from the curb, my phone buzzed in the center console. It was a notification from a local business group I followed. Chloe Van Switman, S. Lush & Lace wins Local Entrepreneur Choice Award for Best New Startup Branding. The photo was of Chloe and my father, both of them holding a glass of champagne. He was beaming. I turned my phone face down. I didn't have a home, I didn't have a car, and I didn't have a family I could trust. But I had the code. I drove toward the only place that stayed open 24 hours a day. The Foundry, a co-working space downtown where I had a basic, hot desk membership that I'd luckily paid for 3 months in advance. That was the last time I used a key to a house I didn't own. The floor of a co-working space closet is colder than you'd think. I spent 3 weeks sleeping on a twin-sized air mattress that leaked just enough to leave my hips touching the linoleum by 4:00 a.m. every morning. I'd wake up in the dark, deflate the mattress, and hide it behind a stack of extra printer paper before the first early bird entrepreneurs arrived. I was down to $80 and change. My clothes were starting to fray at the cuffs, and I'd learned the exact timing of the break room snack restock so I could grab the free oatmeal packets without looking desperate. I was a $12 million idea living on $1.20 worth of instant noodles. One night, the family group text chimed. I should have muted it, but I couldn't stop looking. Dad, saw a woman who looked like Maya panhandling near the metro today. Broke my heart. I told her the door is open if she's ready to grow up and help her sister, but she just keeps choosing this homeless by choice lifestyle. Pray for her. Mom, it's the stubbornness. She always wanted to be special. Now she's just a cautionary tale. Chloe, I feel so bad for her, but also I really need someone to help me tag the new inventory this weekend. If anyone sees her, tell her I'll pay her $10 an hour plus lunch. I stared at the screen, my stomach cramping from hunger and a humiliation so deep it felt structural. They weren't worried. They were enjoying the show. I was the baseline again, the failure that made Chloe's award-winning branding look like a stroke of genius. I turned off the phone and leaned my head against the cold wall. I felt small. I felt erased. 2 days later, there was a quiet knock on the closet door. I froze, thinking it was the building manager finally catching me. I opened it a crack, ready to apologize, but it was Aunt June. She was carrying a heavy, insulated bag and a plastic-wrapped bundle from the dry cleaners. She didn't ask what I was doing in a closet. She didn't comment on the smell of stale oatmeal. She just stepped inside, sat cross-legged on the floor, and opened the bag. "Lasagna," she said. "Still hot. And I pressed that white shirt you left at the house. You have a meeting coming up, don't you?" We sat on the floor and ate in a silence that didn't feel like a judgment. It was the first time in weeks I hadn't felt like a stray dog. The cheese was salty and the sauce was sweet, and for 15 minutes I wasn't a cautionary tale. I was just a niece eating dinner with her aunt. "They're talking a lot, Maya," June said softly, handing me a napkin. "Don't listen. People who build things always look crazy to people who only know how to buy them." She left as quietly as she came, leaving the clean shirt hanging on a hook. An hour later, my phone rang, a number I didn't recognize. I almost didn't answer it. I figured it was a debt collector. "Hello, Maya Vance, this is Elias Vance. No relation," he added with a dry chuckle. "I'm the managing partner at Vance and Associates. I saw your deck through a mutual contact in Richmond. I'm going to be in town tomorrow. Can you meet me at 9:00 a.m.? My heart stopped. Elias Vance was the whale. The investor who didn't just give money, he gave legitimacy. "I'll be there," I said, my voice finally sounding like the person I used to be. I looked at the clean, pressed shirt June had left. It was the only light in the room. It took 3 days for the lasagna to run out and 4 days for the rumors to catch up to me. I was sitting in the corner of the co-working space, the one near the heating vent that clattered like a dying engine, when the first text came. It wasn't from family. It was from Sarah, a girl I'd gone to college with. We hadn't spoken in 3 years. "Hey Maya, I just heard. I am so sorry. I didn't know things had gotten that bad. Please, if you need to talk or if you need the number for a good clinic, let me know. You don't have to do this alone." I stared at the screen, my thumb hovering over the glass. A good clinic. I looked down at my hands, ink-stained from sketching wireframes, but steady. I wasn't sick. I was just broke. Then came the next one. A former coworker. Then a second cousin. The narrative had metastasized while I was sleeping on a closet floor. My father hadn't just told people I was failing. He had rebranded my struggle as a psychiatric breakdown. To the world, I wasn't an entrepreneur taking a risk. I was a daughter having a manic episode that had forced her into homelessness. He had turned my resilience into a symptom. The air in the co-working space suddenly felt too thin. I needed to see someone who wasn't a screen. I needed to remember that I still existed in the physical world. My cousin Jenna was having her baby shower that afternoon. I hadn't planned on going. I didn't have a gift, and my clothes were more thread than fabric, but June's pressed white shirt was hanging on the back of my chair. It felt like a dare. I walked into the Blue Heron tea room at 2:00 p.m. The room was a sea of pastel balloons, the smell of hibiscus tea, and the aggressive tinkling of silverware against china. The moment I crossed the threshold, the volume dropped. It wasn't a sudden silence, it was a wave, starting at the gift table and rolling toward the back. I saw my mother first. She was wearing a silk scarf that probably cost more than my monthly hosting fees. When she saw me, her face didn't soften. It tightened. She stood up and moved toward me, but she wasn't coming for a hug. She was intercepting me. "Maya," she whispered, her hand gripping my elbow with surprising force. "What are you doing here? Look at your shoes." I looked down. They were scuffed, yes, but I was standing upright. "I came to see Jenna, Mom." "You're making everyone uncomfortable," she said, her voice a sharp, rhythmic hiss. Two of my aunts moved toward us, not to greet me, but to form a physical wall between me and the rest of the guests. They stood shoulder to shoulder, their floral dresses creating a hedge of exclusion. "Your father told us you were unstable," Aunt Bates said, her eyes scanning my face for a twitch or a tear. "He said you refused medical help." "I don't need medical help," I said, loud enough for the neighboring table to hear. "I need my family to stop lying about me." My mother's face went pale. She reached over to a side table, grabbed a paper plate with a single, lonely-looking cucumber sandwich and a few wilted grapes, the scraps from the buffet. She thrust it at me. "Just eat quietly in the corner, Maya, over by the coat rack. Don't make a scene today. This is Jenna's day. Don't ruin it with your whatever this is." She pointed to a folding chair tucked behind a decorative screen near the kitchen doors. It was the invisible seat, the place where they put the things they wanted to forget. I looked at the plate. I looked at the wall of floral dresses. I looked at my sister, Chloe, who was holding court at the center table, laughing as she described the hand-poured soy candles she was going to stock in her new shop. She didn't even look at me. I didn't sit down. I set the plate on the edge of the gift table, right next to a giant blue teddy bear. "I'm not hungry, Mom," I said. As I turned to leave, my phone vibrated in my pocket. It was a text from an assistant at Elias Vance's firm. "Mr. Vance needs to see you immediately. He found something in due diligence that we need to discuss in person. Can you be here in 20 minutes? The word due diligence usually meant a deep dive into my finances, but the tone of the text felt different. It felt like a warning. I walked out of the tea room, the silence trailing behind me like a shroud. I didn't know yet that the something Elias had found wasn't in my bank account. It was in his voicemail. The office of Vance and Associates was a fortress of quiet authority. No glass and concrete here, just dark wood, the smell of old paper, and a silence so thick it felt like it was protecting something. Elias Vance didn't stand up when I walked in. He sat behind a desk that looked like it had been carved from a single, ancient tree. He looked at my frayed cuffs, then at my face. He didn't look at me with pity. He looked at me with the focused intensity of a man who was used to solving puzzles that didn't want to be solved. "Sit down, Maya," he said. His voice was like low-grade gravel. I sat. I didn't lean back. I didn't want him to see how much I needed the chair. "Your assistant said you found something in due diligence." "I did," he said. He turned a laptop screen toward me. "I like to be thorough." When a founder with a product this clean keeps hitting walls with local syndicates, I don't look at the product, I look at the walls. He hit a button. The audio was grainy, the sound of someone recording a speakerphone, but the voice was unmistakable. It was the precise, clipped tone my father used when he was explaining why the world owed him everything. "Just a courtesy call, Marcus. It's Gerald Vance. Listen, about the girl, Maya. I know she's pitching you." As her father, I feel a moral obligation to tell you that she's currently in the middle of a significant psychiatric event. She's been missing for weeks, living out of her car, refusing medication. She's a financial liability and, frankly, dangerous to your firm's reputation. I'm working on getting her into a state-mandated program. If I were you, I'd cut ties now before the legalities get messy. The recording ended. The silence that followed was a physical weight. I felt the blood leave my head. The room tilted. I reached out and gripped the edge of the ancient desk. That was left for Marcus at the Coastal Syndicate, Elias said, and I found 3 more just like it. One was left for the Richmond Group, one for the Arlington firm, and this one, he paused, his eyes hardening. This one was left for me, yesterday morning. I couldn't speak. I couldn't even breathe. I thought about the 6 months of hunger, the nights in the closet. The way I'd looked at my own face in the mirror and wondered if I really was losing it. He hadn't just been hoping I'd fail. He had been the one making sure of it. Every time I'd built a bridge, he'd been on the other side with a torch, smiling while he watched it burn. I don't invest in victims, Maya, Elias said. He leaned forward, his hands lacing together. I invest in people who can survive. You've been living in a closet for 3 weeks while a man with unlimited resources tried to bury you alive. And yet, here you are, your code is still running, your decks are still clean, your back is still straight. He reached into a drawer and pulled out a thick folder. He slid it across the desk. This is the draft for a $12 million seed round. I'm leading it. My firm will take 40% of the board, will provide the legal team to handle the family interference, and will provide the security for your servers. I looked at the folder. It was the weight of a life I'd almost let him take from me. Why? I whispered. Because I hate bullies, Elias said, and because your data mapping algorithm is going to make me a very wealthy man, but mostly because I want to see what happens when you stop running and start building. He stood up then. He walked around the desk and did something no one in my family had done in years. He put a hand on my shoulder, not to steer me, not to push me, but to steady me. You're not alone anymore, Maya. You have a partner. Now go get some real sleep. We have a lot of work to do. I walked out of that office into the late afternoon sun. I didn't go back to the co-working space. I went to a small diner 3 blocks away. I ordered a full meal, steak, potatoes, green beans. I ate every bite. I felt the warmth of the food and the weight of the folder in my bag. The ally had stepped forward. I had the backup. But as I watched the steam rise from my coffee, I knew I didn't just want the money. I wanted the truth to have a voice as loud as the lies. I pulled out my phone and texted Aunt June. I need to know when the family portrait is scheduled. Don't ask why, just give me the date. The reply came 10 seconds later. Sunday, 6:00 p.m., your father's house. He's been telling everyone you won't be there because you're away for treatment. Come anyway. I closed my eyes. The battle wasn't over. It was just finally becoming a fair fight. I didn't sleep that night. I spent the hours between midnight and dawn in the 24/7 co-working space, but I wasn't on the floor. I was at my desk, the $12 million term sheet from Elias sitting next to my keyboard like a block of solid gold. I read every line, every clause, every protection. The most important part wasn't the money. It was the date of the first voicemail Elias had played for me. I pulled up my phone and scrolled back through my texts. My father had demanded I move into the spare room and work for Chloe on a Wednesday night at 7:00 p.m. The voicemail to the Coastal Angel Syndicate had been left on Thursday morning at 8:14 a.m. He hadn't even waited 12 hours. He hadn't given me a chance to think about it. The moment I'd defied him, he'd picked up the phone to ensure I had no other choice but to crawl back. It was tactical. It was surgical. It was the family law written in blood: obey or be destroyed. By 6:00 a.m., I had a digital folder that was more explosive than any line of code I'd ever written. Elias' assistant had been busy. She'd sent over the call logs and the transcripts from the other 2 firms. The Richmond firm, Maya is currently experiencing a mental health crisis. The Arlington firm, she is a known financial liability with unstable behavior. It was a map of a ghost. He had been haunting my professional life, wearing the mask of a concerned father while he picked my pockets and burned my reputation. I looked at the timestamps. Every single call was made within 24 hours of me telling him about a successful pitch. He wasn't just reacting to my failure, He was the architect of it. He was protecting the family hierarchy by ensuring the insurance policy never became more valuable than the investment. I felt a strange, cold clarity. For months, I'd been fighting a ghost. I'd been blaming the market, blaming my clothes, blaming my own lack of charisma. I'd been living in a closet because I thought I wasn't good enough. But I was too good. That was the problem. I was a threat to the story he'd told about us for 20 years. I reached into my bag and pulled out a small, silver USB drive. I began dragging the files onto it, the audio recordings, the transcripts, the signed $12 million term sheet. The scanned copies of the Entrepreneur of the Year award Chloe had won for a business my father was propping up with my potential. I wasn't reactive anymore. I was strategic. I called Elias. He picked up on the first ring. "You're up early," he said. "I need a witness," I said, "and I need the legal team to have a cease and desist ready for delivery on Monday morning. But Sunday belongs to me." "You're going to the portrait," Elias said. It wasn't a question. "I'm going to the portrait. I'm going to stand exactly where he tells me to, and then I'm going to move." "Do you want me there?" "No," I said, looking at the sunrise hitting the brick buildings outside. "I want you to be the person who picks up the phone when the world starts calling for the truth. For now, I just need the folder." I spent the rest of the morning at a high-end print shop. I watched the heavy paper slide out of the machine, clean, white, and undeniable. I bought a leather portfolio, the kind my father used to carry. I tucked the transcripts and the term sheet inside. I didn't feel like a victim. I felt like a hunter who had finally found the trail. I checked my phone. One new message from my mother. "Make sure you wash your hair if you're coming on Sunday, Maya. We're using the good photographer this year. Don't look like you've been sleeping in a car." I didn't reply. I just looked at the USB drive. The email was already sent to the family's private server, a delayed delivery set for Sunday night. But the physical proof, that was going to be hand-delivered. I was no longer the baseline. I was the reckoning. I spent Saturday night in a hotel room I paid for with a business credit card that didn't exist 48 hours ago. It was the first time in months I'd slept in a bed with high thread count sheets, but I barely touched them. I spent the night staring at the leather portfolio on the nightstand. Building inevitability is a quiet process. My father still thought he was playing a game with a broken opponent. He still thought I was the girl in the closet, the insurance policy whose value had finally hit zero. The confidence of a bully is a fragile thing, but he wore it like armor. On Sunday morning, he sent one final text to the family group chat. "Dad, portrait is at 6:00 sharp. Photographers are expensive, so don't be late. Maya, I've told them you might be resting, but if you can pull yourself together for an hour, your mother would appreciate the optics. Just wear something that doesn't scream crisis." "Chloe, I'm wearing the cream silk. It looks so good next to the piano. Maya, if you come, you can borrow my old cardigan from high school. It'll cover the holes in your shirt." I didn't reply. I went to my storage unit instead. I bypassed the professional suits I'd bought for the meetings that never happened. I reached past the nice dresses. I pulled out the exact outfit I'd been wearing the day the tow truck took my car. The white shirt from June, now slightly yellowed at the armpits. The jeans with the frayed hems. The scuffed loafers. I wanted him to see exactly what he thought he'd created. I wanted him to feel the supreme comfort of his own victory before I took it apart. By 5:45 p.m., I was parked 2 blocks away from the house. I watched the cars pull into the driveway. My cousins, my aunts, the local photographer who did all the important families in town. I saw Chloe arrive in her new SUV, the white paint gleaming under the streetlights. She hopped out, looking like a catalog model, carrying a garment bag like it was a holy relic. I saw my father come out to the porch. He was wearing his patriarch sweater, the heavy navy wool one he wore when he wanted to look approachable but powerful. He shook hands with the photographer. He pointed toward the living room. He was directing the scene, placing the actors, ensuring every shadow was exactly where he wanted it. I waited until 6:02. I wanted to be the last one in. I wanted the room to be full. As I walked up the driveway, my phone buzzed. It was a notification from the business wires. Elias had moved up the press release. Vance and Associates announces $12 seed round for data mapping startup, Maya Vance to lead as CEO. It was live. The world knew. But the 10 people inside that house were still living in the old world. I stepped onto the porch. The front door was heavy oak, the same wood as the dining table where he'd told me I'd never have what it takes. I didn't knock. I just turned the handle and walked in. The smell of expensive catering hit me, bacon-wrapped dates and chilled shrimp. The living room was a sea of beige and gold. My mother was fussing over a floral arrangement. Chloe was checking her reflection in the darkened window. My father was standing by the fireplace, a glass of scotch in his hand. When he saw me, his smile didn't reach his eyes. It was a smile of pity, the kind you give a stray dog that finally came home for a bowl of scraps. "You made it," he said, his voice loud enough to catch the attention of the ants. "Good, we were just about to start. Go stand in the back, Maya, near the curtains. The light is a little softer there." He didn't know yet that I wasn't there for the photo. I was there for the negative. The living room felt like a stage where the props had more value than the actors. The photographer was moving a floor lamp, his brow furrowed as he tried to find a way to light 11 people without catching the glare from my father's oversized ego. "Okay, everyone," the photographer said, clapping his hands. "In position, tallest in the back, please." My father moved immediately. He was the director. He placed my mother in the center, her silk scarf draped just so. He tucked Chloe in right next to her, adjusting the collar of her cream silk dress like she was a porcelain doll. He pointed my cousins and aunts into a flanking formation. Then he looked at me. "Maya," he said, his voice dropping into that low, cautionary tone. "Get to the back, your cheap clothes are embarrassing." He didn't wait for me to move. He stepped forward and put his hand on my shoulder, the same heavy, controlling grip I'd felt 1,000 times. He began steering me out of the frame, pushing me behind my sister, behind my mother, toward the shadows of the heavy velvet curtains. He was moving me like furniture they'd forgotten to clear out before the guests arrived. "Stay there," he muttered, his thumb digging into my collarbone. "Just a sliver of your face is fine. Hide the fraying, Maya. Smile for Chloe. This is her big night." Chloe fixed her hair in the mirror, a tiny, triumphant smirk playing on her lips. My mother checked the camera lens, whispering something to Aunt Bate about the tragedy of wasted potential. Nobody looked at me twice. To them, I was already a ghost. I didn't argue. I didn't resist his hand. I just waited until the photographer reached for his shutter button. "Wait," I said. The word wasn't loud, but it was sharp. It cut through the room like a razor through silk. The photographer stopped. My father's hand tightened on my shoulder. "Maya, not now," he hissed. "Actually, Dad, now is the perfect time." I shrugged his hand off. It felt like shedding a lead weight. I stepped forward, walking right through the center of their carefully curated lineup. I walked to the dining table, the one where he'd told me I'd never have what it takes, and I reached into my bag. I didn't pull out a magazine. I pulled out the leather portfolio. I set it flat on the table and opened it. I slid the top document out, the term sheet from Elias Vance. The numbers were bold, black, and unmistakable. $12 million. "That's the signed funding agreement for my company," I said. My voice was dead calm, the kind of calm that comes after the storm has already cleared the coast. "The one you told everyone didn't exist." Chloe's smile didn't just fade, it drained out of her face in real time. She looked at the paper, then at me, her mouth hanging open. The room went so silent I could hear the hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen. My father let out a sharp, forced laugh. "Maya, please, we all know you're struggling. This is a delusion. It's part of your condition." He looked at the ants, seeking a chorus of nodding heads. "See, this is what I was talking about. She's manufacturing her own reality now." "I thought you might say that," I said. I reached back into the portfolio and pulled out the stack of transcripts. I didn't hand them to him. I handed them to Aunt June. "June, would you mind reading the date on the first page and the name of the person who made the call?" June took the papers. She put on her reading glasses, her eyes scanning the text. The room held its breath. "It's a transcript of a voicemail," June said, her voice trembling slightly. "Left for the Coastal Angel Syndicate, dated Thursday, October 14th, 8:14 a.m. She looked up, her eyes landing on my father. "Gerald, this is your phone number. You told them Maya was suicidal. You told them she was a legal liability." "I was concerned," my father shouted, his face turning a deep, mottled purple. "I was protecting the family name." "She was out of control, sleeping in her car." "I was sleeping in my car because you threatened to evict me the night before," I said, stepping closer to him. "You called the investors the morning after I refused to work as Chloe's cashier. You didn't do it out of concern, Dad. You did it because you couldn't stand the thought of me succeeding on my own. You needed me to be the failure so Chloe could feel like a success." One of the aunts, the one who had blocked me at the baby shower, flinched. She looked at the paper in June's hand, then at my father's shaking hands. "Gerald," Aunt Bate whispered, "you told us she was in a clinic. You told us she was dangerous." "She is," he roared. He turned to the photographer. "Get her out of here. This is a private residence." "Actually," I said, pulling the silver USB drive from my pocket and setting it on top of the term sheet. "That drive contains the audio of every call you made, to Marcus, to the Richmond Group, to Elias Vance. And I've already authorized my legal team to release them to the local business council tomorrow morning." The defection happened then. It wasn't loud. It was just a movement. Aunt June stepped away from the family lineup. She walked over to me and stood by my side. She didn't say a word, but she put her hand on my arm. Then, slowly, my cousin Jenna, the one whose baby shower I'd ruined, stepped out of the frame too. "You lied to us, Uncle Gerald," Jenna said. "You used us to help you bury her." My father looked around the room. He looked at his wife, who was staring at the floor, her silk scarf suddenly looking limp and cheap. He looked at Chloe, who was clutching her garment bag like a shield. He tried to speak, to find one more lie that would hold the walls up, but the room had shifted. The hierarchy was gone. He was just a man in a navy sweater standing in a room full of people who finally saw him. I didn't wait for him to apologize. I knew he wouldn't. I gathered my portfolio, tucked the USB drive back into my pocket, and turned my back on the camera. "You can take the photo now," I said to the photographer, "but you're going to have a lot of empty space to fill." I walked out the front door. I didn't look back. As I reached the end of the driveway, I heard a car door slam. It was June. "I'm not staying for the shrimp," she said, leaning out her window. "I think I'd rather have that lasagna again." I laughed, a real deep breath of a laugh. The weight was gone. The story was mine. I didn't go back to the co-working space that night. I checked into a quiet hotel downtown, sat on the edge of the bed, and watched the city lights through the glass. My phone didn't stop buzzing. The press release from Elias Vance had hit the local business wires, and by 9:00 p.m., the family group chat was a graveyard of deleted messages. The fallout was practical, then social, then absolute. By Tuesday, the story had moved beyond our living room. Marcus, from the Coastal Angel Syndicate, had received a formal notice from Elias' legal team. Fearing a massive defamation suit and a public relations nightmare, Marcus didn't just go quiet, illegally or not. He started talking to other investors. He confirmed that my father had reached out to him with grave concerns that didn't match my performance. The business community in our town is small. My father had built his reputation on being a pillar of the community, a man of integrity and family values. Within 48 hours, that pillar didn't just crack, it dissolved. Two boards he sat on, the local hospital foundation and the library trust, asked for his resignation by the end of the week. They didn't want the moral obligation of a man who sabotaged his own daughter's survival to protect a seating chart. Chloe's world shrank even faster. Without the steady infusion of daddy's girl, checks to cover her overhead, and with the local news picking up the story of the $12 million seed round, the family tried to stop. Her boutique became a ghost town. People stopped coming in for hand-poured candles when they knew the owner's success was built on someone else's forced failure. She closed Lush and Lace within 3 months. This time, there was no celebratory dinner. There was just an empty storefront and a pile of unsold inventory sitting in my father's garage. My mother stopped calling altogether. I heard through June that she spent most of her time with the curtains drawn, mortified that her scratched-labeled daughter was now the only name anyone wanted to talk about. The social optics she'd spent 30 years polishing had been shattered by the truth, and she didn't know how to live in a house where the lighting wasn't perfect. As for me, my new world is smaller, quieter, but it is entirely mine. I moved into a real office space on the top floor of a refurbished warehouse. We have 12 employees now. We have a kitchen that always has fresh coffee, and nobody has to sleep in a closet. Aunt June comes by every Friday. She doesn't bring lasagna anymore. We go out to a sunny terrace overlooking the river and drink mimosas while she tells me about the books she's finally reading for pleasure instead of work. Yesterday, I was driving to a late-night server migration. I stopped at a red light and looked over at my passenger seat. The heavy leather portfolio was gone. In its place was the original $12 million-term sheet, now framed in a simple black border. Next to it sat my laptop and a bag of takeout for the team. I looked at my car. It's the same beat-up sedan with the dent in the fender. I could buy a fleet of luxury SUVs now if I wanted to, but I like the whistling sound it makes when I hit 40. It reminds me of the girl who sat on the shoulder of the I-95 with $74 and a dream that everyone told her was a delusion. The heater works perfectly now. I fixed it myself. I realized then that I didn't need the family portrait. I didn't need to be in the center of their frame to exist. I was the one holding the camera all along. My father sent me a letter last week. No apology, just a request to discuss the future of the family estate. I didn't open it. I used the back of the envelope to jot down a new line of code, then I tossed it into the recycling bin. If your family actively destroyed your dreams to protect their own ego, would you confront them publicly and risk the fallout, or just walk away and let your success do the talking? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'm reading every single one. There's a story in the description about a woman who discovered her husband was hiding his lottery winnings in her sister's bank account while they were being evicted. Trust me, you'll want to hear that one too. I'm Maya Vance. I'm 29 years old, and for the first time in my life, I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be.